Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. We have an awesome guest on today. He's a UX design leader who helps organizations build products for what's next. He's the founder of Big Medium, a New York design studio specializing in future-friendly interfaces for artificial intelligence, connected devices, and responsive websites. His clients include Samsung, United Airlines, ExxonMobil, About.com, O'Reilly Media, and many others. Please join me in welcoming Josh Clark. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much. It's such a treat to be here.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
Let's see what I can do. I can do at least 18 of them, I'm sure.
Okay, here we go. And number one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I do, I'm sort of surprised to find myself sort of a business person. I'd always thought of myself as a kind of a content and design guy, and over time, I've sort of realized that a lot of what I do in design is kind of about persuasion of, and so what I really do is sort of help large organizations work together better and to help to communicate better, to do things at scale. And so in some senses, I am a therapist of large companies. I'm also a product designer and a UI designer and a developer whisperer.
Great. And just a note for the audience, if you guys are interested in the UX episode, definitely check out the one with Nick Fink. Question two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
That technology projects are actually about people. Like I think that the thing that I've really found through hard experience is that making an app or a website or an AI experience, the technology challenges are often the least of the issues, that particularly when you're working with big teams, a lot of it is just getting people on the same page and aligning incentives and expectations and aiding collaboration. So it's the people who are the hard stuff in work. And I think that that insight has really helped me a lot to help unlock a lot of great things for the teams that I work with.
Great. And three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
I started out as a public television producer, a filmmaker, and a journalist. And that was 30 years ago now. And I think that the common thread is storytelling, to be honest, that a lot of what I do as a UI designer, and even as someone who leads teams of designers and developers, is really trying to figure out the story and the path of what we're trying to accomplish. So in UX design, I think one of the big things is not just what's the path that the user will follow through your application, but also like what's the path that they have to their goals? What is that story? And separately, what's the business's path to their goals? Because I think a lot of the UX challenge is finding the path that links those two, what the business wants and the user needs, figuring out how to truly meet both of those so that both of those sort of sides are met, and then lighting that path as clearly as you can. So I think a lot of what I do and what draws me to this work in an ongoing way as we go through generations of technology is I like to figure out stories and what motivates people and how to make that come to life in product as well as product teams.
Great. And some people struggle with number four, but the question is, what does your future look like?
I am terrible at this. And I'll tell you why. Uh, my daughter recently graduated from college, and in college, she was like one of the things she was really nervous about was like choosing the right career. And the thing that I said to her was, when I was in college, the thing that I'm doing right now didn't even exist. And I think that that pace of change happens all the time. So in terms of the detail of like what my future looks like and what I'll actually be working on, I'm not sure that I know, except that the thing that really excites me is keeping up with it, anticipating the changes that are real and meaningful that are happening in our world in technology and media and culture, and trying to figure out what to do with it. What are those opportunities? So right now we're at one of those seams, I think, around artificial intelligence, which it's unclear exactly how that's going to play out, but it's here and it's now and it's ready to be used. And one of the exciting things that I'm doing now, which I hope defines my future, is figuring out what do you do with emerging opportunities as they come? When are they ready to pick up? And how do you use them in ways that are meaningful for the people you put them in front of?
Nice. Number five, we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Yeah, place matters a lot to me. And I definitely have the type of brain that needs to have the right context for the thing that I'm doing in the moment. So for years, I have had a separate workspace, a separate office, even though I could work at home. And of course, many of us were forced to work at home during the pandemic, whether we wanted to or not. But there's a kind of mental hygiene that's really important to me about being in the right context and also changing context. So, literally going to work or going home are really important things for me to be able to maintain good balance. But I'm also a runner. And one of the things that I do as a runner, and particularly as I've started moving into trail running in the last sort of several years, is just really trying to be present and engaging with that place. So I'm not somebody who uses headphones. I'm always like really sort of trying rather than tuning out my environment to sort of dial into it in that context. And so I think, at least for me, um, the things that I do and the mindset that I try to get into are just really inextricable from place, even as so much of what we make as a digital industry sort of strives to abstract location. For me personally, it remains just so important.
Great. And six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
Man, lighten up. I just definitely would say lighten up. Like you've got time to figure things out. Life doesn't work in a straight path, and you can't plan it all out. So I think it's the kind of thing of being like, don't necessarily take everything so seriously, but roll with what comes for you and see things maybe not so much as obstacles or challenges, but as opportunities to be curious and explore kind of new paths. I think one big part of that too is kind of separating the value of my work from my sense of self. I think for a lot of people who do creative things or who are performers or who simply just pour a lot of themselves into the work that they do, that can be a difficult separation to make of understanding the difference between um, who you are and what you produce. And I think that particularly when it comes to looking for that feedback, that applause doesn't make you a better person. Criticism doesn't make you worse. It is just feedback on something that you've produced. And I think I still struggle with that distinction, but I think that it's an important one. And I think that that is what I would tell my young self starting over is lighten up and don't take stuff so personally.
Great. And what's a day in your life like?
I start every day with a run a little bit before sunrise and watch the sun come up. I live in Miami, so I get to see the sun come up over the Atlantic, which just sort of clears my head and sort of gets my blood pumping for a day. A lot of the work that I do is in conversation, so I am in at my desk and in meetings a lot, helping people sort of think through what to do next. I do less and less actual sort of production work. And as I think about how I help the people I work with do that work, I really try not to be somebody who shows up with the answers, but helps to frame the questions and tee up the work that they do. I think that that's like maybe one of the things that I've learned as a design leader that's important is don't show up with the answers, but create the conditions for people to ask and answer interesting questions. So that's a lot of what my work is. I'm trying on specific days to get sort of large swaths of time where I'm not always in conversation, where I have some time to think and create myself, um, gather thoughts, and as much as I can, share them with others.
Great. And 8 is lifelong learning. It's a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
It just seems harder and harder. I mean, a lot still comes with conversation and being open and curious. And again, trying not to be the person who has all the answers, but who comes with interesting questions. So I learn a lot just in day-to-day conversation. But of course, with this pace of technology and everything, there's also just a lot of reading to do. So I am still a fan of the good old-fashioned RSS feed. I miss that, I miss how kind of Google's drop of Google Reader meant that RSS feeds kind of fell out of favor. For those of you listening who don't know what those are, it was basically just a simple format. It's the same stuff that run podcast feeds these days that any website could publish, and you could just sort of subscribe to these feeds and get sort of rundowns of what's the new content from all of your favorite websites. And so I still use that for the sites that still support it so that I can kind of all the news and information comes to me, and I try to do a quick scan every day just to stay current with small advances as well as big ideas as they emerge.
Great. And 9 is tools. What tools do you use? Do you use digital and analog tools?
I am almost exclusively a digital guy. I don't use paper very much, except when I need to step back and really think about a big problem that needs to be drawn out. So I'll do that on paper or on a whiteboard. Something that is just complex enough that needs to be diagrammed. But even then, at this point, in terms of the amount that I collaborate with people, just whiteboarding in FigJam seems to have replaced that. That's the latest after a bunch of tools like Mosaic and Miro is FigJam. A lot of things happen in Figma in my world. I am still, I guess I would say maybe just barely digital in some respects, in the sense that I do all of my writing in text files, and try to stay somewhat, I guess, close to the metal on some of that stuff. So it's not, I, I try to use as little, the minimum amount of software as I need to get the job done, even though most of my jobs are done with software. I'm also really reluctant to change tools. So I've been using the same text editor, BBEdit, as I have for, I don't know, 30 years now. I found that the switching costs of moving between tools just slow me down and distract me more than the pleasure of learning new tools. I know some people love to use the latest and greatest, drop what they were using and use the new thing. For me, I am slow to change on that front. I have kind of a lot of muscle memory built into the tools that I use.
Great. And halfway, number 10, how do you deal with work-life balance?
Well, I think for a lot of people, it is a struggle. I do my best to keep my work to working hours, but especially since I, along with my partner Brad Frost, lead Big Medium, the agency that we work for, there's a lot of just responsibilities that just kind of constantly leak out of business hours, or that kind of invade the brain when would probably be better thinking about other things. But I think that the best thing that I can do to sort of stay healthy and maintain as much balance as possible has really been uh, sort of maintaining good sleep habits, as much as anything, and just really sort of trying to take care of this aging wreck of a body as well as I can to keep the brain and the energy going.
Great. 11 is if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think there is like a real appeal in going in almost 100% other direction. So right now I live in technology. I'm working with stuff like artificial intelligence and, really emerging technologies. And sometimes I think, I wonder what it would be like to live off the grid and, sort of feed myself and spend days in nature. So that's maybe more of a lifestyle thing than a career thing. But I recognize that there is sort of this desire at times for escape from all of it, which looks in my world kind of like, what if I just stepped out of it completely? I actually do that for a week or two a year. I mentioned that I'm doing a lot of trail running, and so I am going to more and more like remote places for a week or two of running in the trails in the wilderness, which has been like a really great creative and healthy reset for me. So going into the 100-mile wilderness in Maine or going to Patagonia and running around mountains there has been sort of something that I've felt really lucky and privileged to be able to do, but also just really affirming. So, wow, that was a bit of a ramble. I'm not exactly sure what my other career would be, but I do think that there is some other alternate universe part of me that is a grizzled man in the woods.
Great. And what would you not like to do with your career?
Yeah, I think the thing that this wouldn't be disastrous if this happened, but it's something that I've learned about myself is that I am somebody who likes to introduce change, help people adapt to it, and then move on. So, and I think that that's really distinct from a really valuable personality trait, which is people who love to establish something and mature it and evolve it and keep it growing over time, nurture it over time. I think it's rare to find people who like to do both of those equally, but I think one of the things that I've really found that I hope to kind of keep as part of my future, to go back to that future question, is kind of continuing to focus on how do we move through this new seam of opportunity or technology and take advantage of it, or overcome this particular challenge and then move on. What I think I would not be successful at is sort of settling down even into a single company for a long time. One of the things that I do as a consultant is I have the privilege to work with a lot of great companies for a few months at a time and then move on to the next adventure. And so I think what I've realized is that I'm not good at sitting still for a long time. So finding new challenges, new contexts is what I want to do rather than staying put in one over the long term.
Great. Do you have a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
You know, I've always liked words that kind of emote what they mean. And I lived in France for a while, and the French have a lot of good words like this, like dégueulasse, which is sort of disgusting. It just sounds like what it is, or moche, which is sort of like, that's just kind of gross or disappointing. They're just sort of words that sound like they are. I'm drawn to that, things that are sort of expressive. I feel like sensational is one of those as well. I like sensational a lot.
Great. And how about a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I mean, for no particular reason, I guess moist. I feel like that's one that gets a lot of people.
You have one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
Boy, it depends on the day, doesn't it? I guess when I'm feeling good about myself and I'm doing what I want to be doing, generous. I think that I'm um, kind and gentle with people and understanding what they're confronting and trying to be generous with what I can offer to help. And a lot of that, I think, is reflected in the work that I do, that I try to share my ideas and insights. One of the things that we do at Big Medium a lot as a digital agency is rather than going out and trying to um, just build stuff for people that they need, is our focus is on really teaching a team to fish, sort of helping them to build things and understand those things. So a lot of my focus is, how do I make my knowledge my client's knowledge? So I think generosity is, and generous is the word that I would use.
Great. And 16, what keeps you up at night?
Oof. These days, what doesn't? It feels like there's sort of so many um, kind of ominous things in the world, and it affects me. We've got uh, some big wars happening. We have uncertainty in politics and in the economy, and all those things get to me, as well as some of the things at work where if people aren't thriving, either my clients or the people around me, and I feel like there's something that I'm missing in order to be able to help, that worries me, and I fret about that. But I guess those are sort of like pretty sort of big things, and not always things that I can control. And so, things always seem darkest at 3 in the morning, right? When the sunlight sort of makes things a little bit better. So part of what I try to do is tell myself that, take on what I can take on, and or like I would say to my younger self, lighten up and get back to sleep.
Great. And final stretch here. What's a dream you're chasing?
Yeah, kind of coming back to running again, which is just, for some reason has really taken on this new part of my life. I've been a runner for a long time. I created a running schedule called Couch to 5K, which has helped, gosh, millions and millions of people start running. It's always been part of my life, but it's taken on a little bit of, I don't know, an almost obsessive identity, particularly sort of really long distance running. And so I think one of the dreams that I'm chasing is really exploring more and more far-flung places on my feet. And then, kind of coming back to that sense of location, of really immersing myself in what sometimes feels like really disappearing nature and navigating it on my own 2 feet. So one thing that I'm considering that I think everybody I tell about is the kind of thinks I'm crazy. You tell me, Thomas, if you think so. Is like I'm looking at this 100-mile run that would be done over like 5 days, but it's in Colorado along the Continental Ridge, running like 20 miles a day, going from hut to hut. And I think that would be extremely hard for me. There's no question about it, but there's just something that really draws me to that, of like, how do I kind of get more in touch with and create challenges around the nature that I think all of us so often find ourselves more and more isolated from.
Sounds great. And 18, what inspires you?
Um, I think it probably isn't going to surprise you. It's a little bit of some of that kind of natural beauty in the world still gets me. But I think also the one of the things that I love is to see creativity in fields that are not my own. So I get a ton out of going to like art museums, and I love it when there are opportunities to see the progression of a work, like if there are sketches of a painting, um, and then you get to sort of see the fully realized thing and begin to sort of see some of the process or things that people are wrestling with. Just like this reminder that even the folks who we think of as being the greats in their field, and all we see is the finished result, that there's just like so much struggle and effort and questions and false starts that go into work, that it helps me to realize that that's something to continually be open to, is just like that messy process that gets to the finish. So I love to see that process in fields that are totally different from mine.
Great. And 19, any advice you'd like to share?
I guess I'll go back to what I would say from my younger self is, lighten up, everybody. For those of you who are making websites and apps. It's just websites and apps. And enjoy the work. Be kind to yourself as you do it.
Nice. And 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you? What's our call to action?
Number 20, we did it. Well, please come and visit all of us at bigmedium.com. That's big and medium as like the two sizes. Uh, that's where I share a lot of my sort of personal essays, but also our team shares a lot of kind of discoveries and thoughts and ways of approaching the work that we do. And so you'll find work from Brad Frost and from Kevin Coyle, our AI guy, and Ian Frost, a developer, and a lot of our close friends too, about how to approach digital work in sort of new and fresh ways.
Great. Well, it was such a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Thomas. That was fun.